Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. We are blessed with good health, inshallah, and also the desire to continue with our study of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillah. We start off with the intentions for seeking knowledge and teaching. I intend to seek knowledge and to teach to benefit myself and to benefit others, to remind myself and to remind others, to profit myself and to profit others, to urge adherence to the book of Allah and the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to invite to guidance and to guide to that which is good, seeking the face of Allah, His pleasure, His closeness, and His reward, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's continue on with our Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم نور بالقرآن بصري واشرح به صدري وأطلق به لساني واستعمل به بدني وقوي به جناني وأسرع به فهمي بحولك وقوتك فإنه لا حول ولا قوة إلا بك يا أرحم الراحمين والصلاة على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين بفضل سبحانك ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الحمد لله الحمد لله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي الحمد لله. We have completed Surah Duhan. Took about 5 lessons, Alhamdulillah, for 6 lessons. Today we continue with Surah Al-Jathiyah. This is just the next surah after Surah Duhan, Surah 45. It follows through. Introduction. This is a 65th surah revealed in Mecca in the 11th year of Rasulullah's mission. We are towards the end part of the mission of Rasulullah SAW in Mecca. It contains 37 verses, so we expect to finish most probably in 5 weeks also, inshallah, before we go on to the next surah. This surah is the counterpart of Surah Ad-Duhan with regards to its name, introductory verses, and basic meanings. All right, so the name, actually, we will talk about these surahs. They seem to have the same name, called the same name, but with the difference is that of brevity and explanation. So introductory verses, almost the same as Duhan. Basic meanings, basically basic ideas, concepts, right, are the same. But it's shorter, as we know, it's only 37 verses compared to Surah Duhan, which we had 59 verses. All right, so the Quraysh are told in it that every part of the heavens and the earth is replete with arguments which substantiate monotheism and the hereafter, and Allah has also detailed them out in His book. So again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings people's attention, especially the Quraysh, their attention to look at the heavens and the earth, because there's enough argument to confirm that there is only one God and there is a hereafter. By looking at the stars and the moon, we see the skies and the earth, we actually realize that there is hereafter, which means we can come to a conclusion that there is an afterworld. And also Allah has detailed it out in His book. They are warned and threatened in explicit words that if they are not being able to understand these arguments, then they in fact cannot understand anything of this world. So that is what it is. Allah presents his arguments and it's clear and profound, and if you use your intellect, you should be able to understand it. But if you don't understand, then you won't understand anything at all. First, people will have would not be agreeable to that, especially those people who has no belief in God, and they feel that they are good in this world. They can understand lots of things, but of course, this understanding is a different kind of understanding that Allah is putting forth for all of us. The matter now rests with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He will take a decision in this regard concerning these people. So it is not for us to decide whether they go to heaven or hell. It is up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knows the realities of his slaves, his creatures, and he will decide accordingly how he would handle them in the next world. Muslims are given good news, in unequivocal words. Good news in unequivocal words that with patience they should bear the circumstances they are facing. So there's a lot of patience in life, right? If you are able to bear with things that happens around you, inshallah, you would have good news. And the good news is, of course, success in this world and also success in the next world. We've seen that in Surah Ad-Duhan. If they resolutely adhere to the stance, there shall be the final victory. That means the belief in Allah, the desire to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the commitment to being a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The hardships they will bear for this cause will not go to waste. Allah will richly recompense them for this steadfastness. So every time things goes difficult in your life, just remember Allah is with you, Allah is looking on at you, and Allah will be there for you for things that are difficult in your life. And also the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you follow them carefully, all these trials will not be really that difficult, inshallah. The surah belongs to the time when the Jews had started to openly support the Quraysh. All right, you've seen here, it's already 11 years since the mission of Rasulullah SAW. By that time, the Jews have heard about this prophet who is this man who claims himself to be a prophet. And the Jews are not very happy because he's an Arab. And also the number of the people from Yathrib, Medina, Yathrib, has sort of looked at this person, and quite a number of them has started to believe in this person as the last prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right, people of Yathrib, they are special compared to the other Arabs because of the presence of the Jews in Yathrib. Yathrib is the old name of Medina. The Jews are there because they knew that they had information in their books that the final prophet would be in Medina. So that's why they settled in Medina, hoping that one of their descendants would be a prophet. At the same time, they have sort of warned the Arabs of Medina about the coming of the prophet, and also gave some indication of his message and his ways and things, and his appearance and such, and his characteristics. So was easy actually for the Yathrib, people of Yathrib, to embrace Islam because they had information from the Jews. However, the Jews, realizing that he is Arab, and also he brings rulings that are not very palatable to them, they find it quite. They're not happy with the fact that human beings are all the same, and the best of them are people with taqwa. They are not. They are supposed to be this special group of people. So they have to maintain that status quo of being the chosen one of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they are actually supporting the Quraysh, who are against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For this reason, the Jews to rebuke very blatantly. We see that in the last few chapters of the surah in Mecca, right? There are reference to the Jews because of their not willing to support the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That because of their misdeeds, they have been deposed from the position of religious and political leadership, which Allah had bestowed on them. So they were given, yes, they were the ones, the chosen people, but Allah announced that they had no more that chosen people because they have failed, right, to uphold the religious duties, and also they have denied the Prophet. They were denying the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now their matter will be presented in the court of Allah, and He will then pass a verdict about their fate. Again and again, we are not supposed to decide on them. We're going to leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to decide their fate, how they are. At the same time, Muslims are reminded to stick to the radiant path Allah has made evident to them, and to be aware of these evil religious people. When I say evil religious people, they seem to be religious, but in fact they are not religious. Yeah, I was listening to a very interesting story from Muhammad Ninowi. He was relating how Salman Al-Farsi, right? He went out of his country, Persia, and to travel to find the true God. And the first of his he became he served a monk. The first of this monk, according to Salman al-Farsi, was a very evil man. So religious but evil. So people see him as a religious. He's evil. He collected money and he kept for himself. He got tons of money stashed away, and he committed all the sins that he asked people not to commit. So that's the kind of evil religious people around. All right. After he passed on, Salman did expose his ways, and Salman then served another monk who was very, very religious. All right, so yes. But it's all right. They are trying hard to force Muslims to adopt the innovations they have fabricated, and thereby deprive them of the path of Allah the way they have deprived themselves of it. So they create ways, they create rulings that will cause people, that will divert people from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the Jews. All right, the merit of reciting this surah. According to a prophetic tradition, Allah Almighty will conceal the defects of whoever recites Surah Al-Jaathiah and will turn his fear into serenity. So you can see that there are very many benefits of the surahs, and that is why it is encouraged that we read the Quran on and on and on and on and on, so that we gain all the benefits of all the various surahs that we are reading. Right? We are encouraged at least twice a year, right? Which means about every 6 months we do a Quran. That is actually supposed to be the least. You can do more once in 2 months. That means half a Quran, half a juz a day. If you can, better still 1 month, once a month. Right? Or most of us will do that in the Ramadan. Inshallah, Allah bless us with our time to read the Quran. But go on reading the Quran. If you can't read, just follow through those who can read. It is narrated that whoever recites this surah will not be frightened on the day of judgment, and these private parts will remain covered, whereas all people will be raised naked on this day. So these are opinion. These are again narrations. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows their authenticity, but we look at this. This surah protects us from fear. And the fear of the day of judgment is really, really immense. And we ask Allah to protect us from that fear. There are chosen people, Allah has mentioned in the Quran, chosen people who will have no fear on that day. Right? And to be clothed on that day is really a great honor. Ja'far as-Siddiq is the great grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Great grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, has said that whoever recites this surah will not see Jahannam, and neither will he hear the voice of its flames. We read Surah Al-Muluk. We have not done muluk, but inshallah when we do muluk, they will actually hear the seething of the fire, the screaming of people in the fire, and the sounds of the fire. But these people will not. This is very tormenting. Just to hear itself is really frightening. So people will be protected from hearing all those things. All right. So these are the benefits. We continue with the surah itself. The words that we have. Right, most of you have got your books already. Watasarif, wa is and, sarafa is to doesn't look like, you look at it this word, because if a ta, it's a sarafa, it's not sarafa. The root word is sarafa, definitely, right? Dispatching. in dispensing. Tasrif, ta could be a you, it could be an it. Will look at it at the sentence itself later on. All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hamim. We start with Hamim. We've been doing this Hamim for the past few months. Right? This surah, like the previous surahs, begin with the huruf muqatta'at ha mim. This is the sixth surah of the Hawa Mims. They are called the Hawa Mims, right? Because they start with ha and mim. Right? Ha and mim. Hawa mim. Ha and mim. Wow. All right. It's what and so ha and mim. So there's 7 of them. Right, this is the 6th surah of the Hawamims. It is related to traditions that a man said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "I'm old and my memory is imperfect and my tongue is stiff." And the Prophet sallallahu replied, "Then repeat 3 of the surahs beginning with Hamim." That means you choose any of the 3 surahs that begins with Hamim. There's 7 surahs that begin with Hamim. All right. Interestingly, there's a hizib. A hizib is a kind of dua, a collection of supplications and verses from the Quran. Right, Hizib Bahar is called a Hizib Bahar, and in the Hizib Bahar you have 7. You actually recite Hamim, Hamim, Hamim 7 times, right? And the scholar has says this 7 times actually is a reference to you starting off reciting every one of these 7 Hawamims. All right, Mishkat. This is from the Mishkat. All right. The 2 separate letters Hamim to point to this book's sources. They highlight the fact that Quran is composed of the letters forming the Arab's own language, yet they cannot produce even a very small portion like it. All right. What does it mean? The 2 separate words is to point to this book's source. That means the source of this book are letters. So this is one of the opinions, as we mentioned, that Hamim, this huruf muqatta'at, which means cut off letters. Muqatta'at means to cut off. So muqatta'at, they are singly letters. So just letters pronounced as letters. Not hama. You see the mim with a fatha on it. So we don't pronounce it as hama, but we pronounce it as hamim, right? So they highlight the fact that the Quran is composed of the letters. So this is opinion saying that the Hamim actually preludes or reminds people that the surah and the Quran itself are made up of letters. And these are the letters that are used, and yet, and these letters are from your own language, yet they cannot produce even a small portion like it. This then constitutes permanent evidence that the Quran is bestowed from on high by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, who can do whatever He wishes, the wise, who creates everything according to a certain measure and to serve a particular purpose. So the whole Quran in itself, right, is an evidence, is a permanent evidence to the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the all-wise. He does anything. He can bring forth great literature which none can have who none can compete against, right? None is able to produce such great masterpiece. This is an apt comment that fits the ambiance of the surah and this discussion of different types of people. So this is how they see it as the presence of the ha and the mim. Hamim is the name of the chapter. All right, these chapters, all the 7 chapters, actually, they just call it Hamim, but actually, they have their names. We are referring to their names, right? So this particular surah also is called Hamim. Some of them, we call them Hamim, Sajda, Hamim. Then we've not gone to the Hamim Sajdas yet. Right, anyway, it is narrated from Ibn Abbas that Hamim is the greatest divine name. So he's saying that Ibn Abbas is saying that Hamim itself is the greatest divine names. People are finding for these great divine names. We've got names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which represents his attributes, 99 names that we are quite familiar with. Right? They are great bounty, great benefits to be able to recite and even to memorize the 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So why are the Hamim? Why does Ibn Abbas says this? Maybe we had gone through this, but sometimes it's just nice to just go through them again and remind ourselves. We tend to forget what we have learned sometimes. All right, the name allude to divine names beginning with Ha or Mim. So they say the ha represents a set of names, the names which start with ha. And the mim represents a set of names which the name starts with mim. So among the names that are ha, we have Hamid, the praiseworthy. We've got Halim, the clement or the forbearing. We've got Hayy, the living. We've got Haqa, the truth. We've got Hakim, the wise. We've got Hakim, the arbitrator. All right, it's Hakam. I think it's not Hakim. It's Hakam. It's one Hakim and it's Hakam. Right, and the other one is Hafil, the protector, and Hafiz, the guardian. All right, they have two names. Hafiz, it's the same thing. All right, the two meanings of the name Hafiz, and not Hafiz. There's another one, the Hafiz sound, just the one that debases. There's Ha, not Ha. This is Ha. All right. And then Mims represent Malik, the ruler, Majid, the glorious, Majid, the honorable, Mabdi, the beginner, Mu'id, the returner, the Mu'iz, the exalted, and Muhaymin, the vigilant. So there's lots of. And so these are the great names, right? So which, these are opinions of scholars again, right? We just understand that they have such opinions. And it's quite interesting to see how they come about with these opinions of theirs. It is also said that Hamim is an oath by divine clemency and sovereignty. Visually, I swear by my clemency, that means my Halim, and sovereignty, my Malik, that I shall not chastise those sincerely uttering there is no God but Allah. So those who sincerely say La ilaha illallah, believing that there is no God but Allah. Of course, there is a lot to the meaning of La ilaha illallah, especially when it says sincerely saying La ilaha illallah. Right? It means that you are convinced that you have nothing in your heart but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is your creator. He is the one that you turn to, and you would obey him at all times because he is your creator. So there's lots. It's not just uttering La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah without doing anything. It's sincere. Sincere means you take him as your God. You're going to obey him whatever it takes. That's called La ilaha illallah. All right. Some say that Hamim are the two middle letters of Rahman. So Rahman is a Ha there, and the name Muhammad, there's a Mim there, alluding to the secret known by Allah Almighty and his friend Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you can see many suggestions about Mim, right? For us to be exposed to it, to realize it, right? But we don't know. Allah knows best. At the end of the day, the scholars will say, Wallahu alam, and Allah knows best. So it means, There are other justifications for these two letters, however, since the letters of the alphabet in the openings of a number of Quranic chapters are, as it is well known in Islamic sources, among ambiguous verses whose knowledge is with Allah Almighty and those firmly rooted in knowledge, rasikhun fil ilm. All right, what does it mean is that at the end of the day, most of the scholars say these are what you call mutashabihats. Mutashabihat verses, which means verses which might resemble something, but in reality, no one really knows what it means. Not no one, but there are special people who are given this knowledge, and normally they are not exposing what they know. Right, anyway, we continue. Okay. Tanzilul Kitabi. Right, look at the word Tanzilul Kitabi. We know it is an off structure, or you call it the mudaf ilahi structure. All right, now tanzil is actually it's not a verb. All right, it is verbal noun. Right, it's a noun. Looks like a verb, but it's actually a noun. Tanzilul kitabi. Tanzilul kitabi. That means the sending of. So there's no the there because it's an off structure, but the al of the kitab is taken as the translation. All right, so the sending down of the book is understood as it means tanzilul kitab, the sending down of the book. And kitab is in its jar state. Min Allah, from Allah, Azizil Hakim, Aziz, the Almighty, Hakim, the All-Wise. Allah starts off with most of the huruf muqatta'at. Right, Allah explains or make a mention of the Quran. Tanzilul kitabi, the sending down of the book, minallahi, from Allah, Azizil Hakim, he is Aziz, he is Hakim. So you can see that min Allah is in jar state, and Aziz also in Hakim are all in jar state from the min, right? As describing Allah, Aziz describes Allah, and Hakim describes Allah. Tanzilul kitabi min Allahil Azizil Hakim. Like the introductory part of the previous surah, this surah too contains a reference to the exaltedness and significance of the Quran. However, the nature of the significance mentioned here is different from the one mentioned in the previous surah. So you can see the creativeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He presents various ideas and concepts in various ways that astounds people. You just get amazed at how beautifully Allah can describe the Quran in different ways. Like Yasin, wal Quran al Hakim, and Yasin was another two huruf muqatta'at. Wal Quran al Hakim, by the Quran that is wise. The Quran is wise. That was describing the Quran. But now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the sending down of the book from Allah and describing Allah is Aziz and He is Hakim. Allah is Aziz and Allah is Hakim. Tanzilul kitabi minallahil azizil hakim. The word tanzil has the meaning of gradual progression, an elaborate effort and thoroughness of the Almighty in revealing the Quran. So gradual progression, we know that the Quran did not come in one shot. The Quran comes bits and pieces. And the amazing thing is that, those people who are reciting the Quran together with the Prophet ﷺ, as the Prophet receives the Quran, that not all the verses of a surah are sent down concurrently, consecutively. As I'm giving an example. This is not a true example in the sense that I'm just giving a picture of what it means, right? We have the first surah, Iqra. We know first 5 verses came down to Rasulullah SAW. The 6th verse did not come to Rasulullah SAW. It came much later, after maybe Surah Al-Mudathir, Surah Al-Muzammil, and some has mentioned the various surahs that are sent down. Even some has mentioned that Fatiha has come down. Also because Rasulullah SAW was taught by Malaikat Jibril how to do his salat. Salat was immediately taught to Rasulullah SAW by Jibril after the first encounter in Jabal Nur, or we call it Gar Hira, or cave of Hira, because it shows the criticalness of the salat, that the salat is important. Right? It's necessary for us to be in contact with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to realize that we are slaves of Allah and we have a master to bow down and to prostrate to and to obey. All right, so this is very critical. So Nabi Muhammad SAW was taught immediately salat. That also we have in the story of the conversion of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, where one day, as we know, Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, although he was the cousin of Rasulullah SAW, he was also the foster child of Rasulullah SAW, because Rasulullah SAW, when he's 10 years old, at that time Rasulullah was 40, so kind of big gap in age. And Rasulullah SAW saw that his uncle Abu Talib was rather poor, so he offered to care for Ali radiallahu anhu. So Ali grew up in the household of Rasulullah SAW, and he saw Rasulullah SAW and Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu anha doing their salat. Before he became Muslim, as we know, Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anha was the first child to be converted to Islam. So that was the moment when he saw them doing that. He was smart enough, intelligent enough to realize that they are praying to a God, although he has never seen this form of praying to a God, but he was sure that was what it was. And he confirmed it when he asked Rasulullah SAW what he was doing. And that's when Rasulullah SAW invited him to Islam. So we know the verses are coming down in stages, right? And not all. As mentioned surah by some scholars, that Surah Al-Baqarah took 10 years to be revealed. 10 years is the 10 years of Rasulullah in Mecca, sorry, in Medina, right? And in Medina itself, 86 surahs were revealed, and most of them are really, really long surahs. So all these surahs are revealed bit by bit. And those people who are some people who doesn't have much knowledge and get influenced by Google and whatever they see online, right? They were told that the surahs doesn't have names, and so the names were just invented or created by some of the Sahabas and things like that. It's quite difficult if the surahs are not named and they come down, like for example, Surah Al-A'raf, verse number 20, and then comes the next verse, Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse number 30, and other comes. If you don't have names, how to make reference? And the Sahabas are all reminding where the surahs are. They don't have, most of them can't even read and write. They just have to memorize where the surahs are placed, and they are really, really strong memorizers. We can imagine that. Here, besides mentioning this elaborate arrangement, Allah has also referred to two of his attributes, Aziz and Hakim. Aziz and Hakim. Tanzilul kitabi min Allahil Azizil Hakim. All right, the former means powerful and dominant, and the latter refers to someone whose each and every word and deed has some wisdom. All right, so that's referring to Rasul Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right. So Aziz shows Allah powerful, dominant, right? Mighty. We've gone through that a few times. And also we have Hakim, he's all wise. Every single thing he does is with his wisdom. By mentioning together these two attributes here, two things are evident. First, the God who has revealed this Quran in such a thorough and elaborate manner is not weak, frail, and helpless. So that's the opposite of Aziz. In fact, he is a sovereign Rabb, and the dominion of this universe is in his hands. He's powerful. He controls everything. That is his mighty. This Quran is not a request. It is a royal decree of the real master of this universe, who must necessarily be obeyed. Right? It's not a request. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam never pleaded, never make a dua, ya Allah, make me a prophet. He never did. Right? He never realized that he would be a prophet. And when the first time Malaikat Jibril came to him and announced to him that he's going to be the messenger of Allah, he was in a state of shock. Not only that, he was shivering when he came down from Jabal Nur to Makkah. It was quite a distance at Jabal Nur to Makkah. And Sayyidah Khadijah radiallahu anha could see his state of fright. And so he's called later on by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya ayyuhal muzammil, oh, you who are covered up. Anyway, so it's not a request. Allah sent it because it is a royal decree of the real master of the universe. Right? He wants you to know him. He wants to guide all of us. He wants to show us the best of ways to live in this world so that we will achieve supreme success in the next world. And he must be obeyed because he is God. If it is not duly honored, then people should remember that when he will seize them, no one will be able to stop him. It here would mean the Quran should be honored. Right? Now, Aziz, and the name of Aziz is Izzah, comes from the word Izzah has the same root word as Aziz, and that is honor and dignity. Dignity of Allah, the dignity of the Quran, the honor of the Quran, and Allah has blessed the Quran. And people should remember that when he will seize them, no one will be able to stop him because he is Al-Aziz. So Al-Aziz has got a few meanings. We've seen that in our various other lessons where we identified the various meanings of Al-Aziz. Secondly, besides being powerful, sovereign, and dominant, Allah is also wise. This means that every word and deed of his is based on wisdom. The majesty of his wisdom is evident from his book, which is replete with wisdom. only if people care to reflect on it. So much wisdom. In fact, as we mentioned, Surah Yasin, it is said that Yasin al-Quran al-Hakim, Allah says Yasin, and he swears by the Quran that is wise. The Quran in itself is wise. It's as if the Quran is a creature. In fact, we do have this understanding, this belief that the Quran will be transformed into a creature, right? And be a friend of ours in the grave, inshallah. And will be there to protect you and to defend for you till the day of judgment. That is, of course, we need to recite the Quran, live by the Quran, and embrace the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's true words from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and realize the great wisdom in the Quran. There's lots of wisdom in the Quran. Those who are deprived of learning the Quran and not being able to realize the wisdom in the Quran, they live life rather, they don't really have the most of life, because that is the great source of joy and happiness and wisdom from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A majestic feature of his wisdom is that even though some ingrates and worthless people are showing disregard to his book and to his messenger, he, in spite of being powerful and prevailing, is not showing haste in seizing them. So we talk about wisdom, right? A very profound feature of his wisdom is sin, and the fact that despite people being very rude, very arrogant, denouncing the words of Allah, making fun of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah does not seize them, just leave them for some time. And yes, that is of his wisdom. We believe that via his wisdom, he is not punishing people. He knew, right, when who they are and exactly what they are, what they have been doing, and he can punish them there and then if he wants to, but he did not. So that shows the greatness of his wisdom. On the contrary, he keeps on extending their respite so that those who have the ability can mend their ways and make themselves worthy of his mercy, and those who have wasted their abilities are conclusively conveyed the truth. On the day of judgment, they will have no excuse to present. Right? So those were given the truth, the message, and still does not want to listen, does not improve themselves, and live life, they have wasted their abilities. They have lost, right? In our understanding, they have lost in this world and lost in the next world. So the mention of Allah's attribute, the Almighty and the Most Wise, reminds people that providing timely directions at every significant step of the way is very easy for him, and that because of his wisdom, he is able to direct people, right? And all the Quran's teachings are based on his ultimate wisdom. This opening statement also consoles the Prophet ﷺ that the Almighty and Most Wise, who is revealing it, will also ensure that the movement started by the Quran succeeds and prospers. He also warns his opponents that they are opposing the word of the Almighty and All-Wise, and thus they are not only depriving themselves of his wisdom, but also subjecting themselves to his wrath. Right? So this also, so you can see that there are various opinions on why Allah highlighted two attributes, Al-Aziz and Al-Hakim. So this last part of the opinion is that this is this second part here. The opening statement also consoles. So how does it console Rasulullah? By knowing that Allah is Almighty, he can do whatever he wants to do, but at the same time is wise. So there is no desire to escalate or to get upset when things stay stagnant for a while, or things doesn't go the way you want to go. It seems like it's not happening the way it should be happening. For example, the Sahabas were sitting with Rasulullah SAW in the shade of the Kaaba once. And one Sahaba was complaining about the tortures that was inflicted on them. And Rasulullah SAW, and they asked Rasulullah SAW to pray to Allah, right, that these people will be destroyed. Rasulullah SAW said that I am sent, as a mercy to the world, rahmatan lil alamin. And so he tells them to be patient because he's aware that Allah is almighty. Allah can do anything that he wants. So he's all wise. He leaves them for some time, right? Sometimes that moment in which the Muslims are persecuted really, really heavily during the early years of Islam, right? It shows us that human beings, how they can behave when they do not get, when they have got fears, right, or being displaced. And it's the only main reason why the Arabs chose not to obey Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he knows that, and he reminds them that he is sent as a mercy to the world, and he reminds them that there are those people who before Islam, and there are many Jews among the Jews were very, very pious, and they were sawn into two, right, because of their piety and not willing to denounce their faith. So knowing Allah is mighty, right, we know Allah will exact his punishment on those who deserve it, but he is all wise. So we believe in the wisdom of Allah, right, and that we do not get upset when things do not go, when we see as if Allah is not helping us. It's like there was a commentator who was giving a report on Syria, and the question she asked was, where is Allah? There's no such thing as where is Allah if you understand the wisdom and might of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because he leaves things, he says, us human, very, very, very impatient, or not able to see things in the correct light, for example. There are lots of mysteries abound when things look bad, correct? We see this in Surah Kahfi. Inshallah, when we go to Surah Kahfi, you will see this story between Nabi Musa and Nabi Khidir, how Nabi Khidir actually did things which look horrible and evil, but and unfair, but there are reasons behind it. So it helps us to understand that Allah has his moments when he would exact punishment against those who are cruel. In this brief introduction to the surah, the listeners have been warned of two things. That this book is not the composition of Muhammad SAW himself, but it is being sent down by him to him by Allah. So, Tanzilul kitabi min Allah. It's from Allah. And that is being sent down by Allah, who is almighty as well as all-wise. His being the Almighty demands that man should not dare disobey his commands, for if he disobeys him, he cannot escape his punishment. So when we talk about the Aziz of Allah, we are reminded of the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so if you do fear punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you don't want to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And his being the all-wise demands that man should obey and follow his guidance and his commands with full satisfaction and willingness of the heart. For there can be no possibility of his teachings being wrong or inadequate or harmful in any way. Right? So knowing that Allah is all-wise, we obey him because of his wisdom and follow exactly his guidance and his commands. And we are happy because we are with the one who is all-wise and who is able to do anything and everything. So we are happy, we are satisfied, and willingly open our hearts to obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because we know there's no way his teaching is going to be wrong or inadequate or harmful because he's all wise. All right. Oh my subhanallah. We got to fill up this one. For the believers. For the believers. Surely signs. And in disguise, surely. All right, sorry about that. Inna fis samawati wal arsh, surely. So all these words we have learned already, inshallah. Every single one of these words by now, most of you should know the meaning. Inna, surely, you know that. Fis samawat, samawat skies, we of course refer to the seven skies, in the skies. Wal ard, and the earth. La ayat, you know this is plural, there's alif here, mix and ta here like that. We know it is a plural female. La ayat, la is lam of emphasis, ayat, signs. Lil mu'minin, for the believers. Lil mu'minin, for the believers. Most surely in the heavens and the earth, there are signs for the believers. All right, Allah says. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after mentioning the Quran, which is sent down by Allah, and Allah is Aziz and Hakim, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stresses again, emphasize that inna, surely, in the skies, fis samawat, and in the earth, la ayatil lil mu'minin, surely signs for the believers. Now here Allah says in the skies, and then Allah says the signs in the skies are for the believers. Mu'minin is an ism, right? It represents a person who is always in the state of belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all points in time. You know, an ism, or we call it a noun here, right? Is an ism in Arabic has got no time frame. It means because it's an ism. For example, if I say I am teaching, yes, I am teaching right now, you can see me teaching. But if I say I'm a teacher, right, everybody knows that I can teach sometime somewhere, but I'm not teaching at the moment. I might not be teaching at the moment, but I am known to be a teacher who is one who teaches, right? So there is no time frame. That means it's not, if I say I taught, then it's yesterday I taught. If I say I'm going to teach later on, then there is a time frame. Later on, I'll teach. I say I'm teaching, that's now, right? So there's time frames for verbs, but not for nouns. So he's a noun. That means it's definitely at any time he is one who believes. Now, because he is a believer, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually highlighted samawats. When you talk about samawats, you talk about the unseen also, okay? Because the samawats are the seven skies. We only are able to witness the first kind. It's a sama, not samawat. And in the skies itself, right, we see all kinds of universe and lots of planets and stars, and maybe lots of Milky Ways also. They say, yeah, but this astronomers has got very powerful telescopes to see beyond everywhere. How much can they see? All right, so here, when you talk about samawats, as mentioned, you're talking about the seven skies. When you talk about the seven skies, you're talking about the presence of jinn, and the presence of the arash, presence of the qalam, presence of the sidratul muntaha. All these are things which we have learned. Of course, the presence of Allah, the unseen, and you've got the presence of the angels, and all these things are beliefs, are only linked to beliefs. If you don't believe, you cannot have these signs in you, because all these things cannot be seen, and it is just believing without seeing. Inna fis samawati wal ardi ayatil liqawlil mu'minin. Let's see what they have to say, the scholars. Before speaking about the unbelievers and their attitude towards the Quran, the surah refers to signs pointing to the Creator that are available everywhere in the world around them. Alone, the signs should have been enough to direct them to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for believers, right, whatever is in the skies, whatever in the earth is enough, right? Signs for them. They ponder over things, and their faith in Allah gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And the Surah turns their minds to such signs that they may open their hearts to them and realize that it is Allah who has bestowed this book from on high, and that it is He who has created this great universe. Mentioned, it is the samawats. When the samawats are mentioned, it brings to mind people the realization that we cannot know everything, because we do not know where the seven skies are. It's out of our boundary, our dimension. As we know, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went up the seven skies, and when he described it, it sounds so physical. There's a door to the first sky, and there's an angel there, and the angel asking him. It's all the narrations that we have during Isra Mi'raj. And And then seated there is the Prophet Adam. I think the first one is Adam. I can't really remember the arrangement of all the prophets that he met as he went up to the seventh sky. And in the seventh sky, he met Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, at the Sidratul Muntaha. All these terms are terms which we know, we believe, because we are believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So people who are not believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who are not believers in the unseen, who's not believing in the might of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who doesn't see signs, because some of the signs that are to be to make us ponder are signs of the invisible world. To begin a discourse like this after the introduction indicates that in the background there are the objections of the people of Mecca, which they were raising against the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ. So there is a reason, as we know, most of the verses come down with reasons. And so it's called Asbabun Nuzul, which means the reason behind the sending down of the various verses. And that is why the Quran is unique, right, as compared to the other books of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran, as mentioned, is tanzil. Tanzil means it is sent down piecemeal, and as it is sent down, it actually has a profound effect on the receivers, because it relates to certain incidences during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So here, as mentioned here, the objections of the people of Mecca. So because they are making so much an uproar, it's already 11th year and they are still not happy. They still doesn't want to leave the Prophet ﷺ alone. In fact, their objection to him, the attacks on him is mounting, because by this time we are aware that his two great supporters, Abu Talib, right? Although Abu Talib was poor, he was honored by the Arabs because of his position, right, as the son of Abdul Muttalib, and also they have got some clout there for them. Anyway, and also Khadija radiallahu anha, who was a very rich, powerful woman. All right, so they were not happy. I mean, after these two passed on, they mounted the attack even much greater on Rasulullah SAW. That is why we have Rasulullah SAW going off to Ta'if to get support, but he was badly injured and harmed when he was in Ta'if. But then again, we saw the beautiful akhlaq of Rasulullah SAW despite being stoned and bleeding. All right, anyway, so they were, and again, another problem with the Quraysh at that time was that they realized that the Arabs from Yathrib are coming down to become Muslims, to take a bay'at or allegiance, to swear allegiance with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and bringing back the message to Yathrib, and also Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sending envoys to Yathrib to teach the Muslims, the new Muslims there, about Islam. So they just want to kill him. Actually, they really wanted to kill him because they fear the spread of the religion throughout Arabia. And of course, the main fear for them is that people would remove their idols from the Kaaba, and hence they would not gain businesses from the pilgrimage of the people. So they're very much against Rasulullah. They said, after all, how can we believe this one man when he says that all those great beings to whose shrines we have been dedicated and devoted so far are nothing, and the Godhead belongs to only one God? So that is their contention. Of course, this is just a frame up kind of thing, or just a facade, right, to their real intent or their real fear is of losing businesses. That's their real fear. And not only businesses, of losing honor. They are honored people because they are considered as the custodians of Kaaba. The Quraysh has given that. It is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verse, the surah, لِإِلَافِ قُرَيْشٍ, to remind the Quraysh, right, that they are in that state of serenity and security because Allah has blessed them with the custodian of Masjid al-Haram. So they don't want to believe him. They always use their gods as a means to incite loyalty, right, and thus fight against this man who denounces their gods. About this, it is being said that the world is replete with the signs of the reality to which they are being invited. So invited to the truth, the real. Allah is the real, Allah is the truth, al-haq, right? And they could see all this. But of course, these signs are there for those who believe. So in some sense, it is making a reference to the fact that you can't see the signs because you are not believers. If you are believers, you'll see lots of signs that point to Allah being God. If only they saw with open eyes, they would find those signs in themselves and outside them everywhere, which testify that this whole universe is the creation of one and only one God. So they are not looking, they are not believing. That is why they can't see. And He alone is the master and ruler and controller. It didn't need to be pointed out what was the nature of the signs in the earth and heavens. For this dispute at that time centered around the point that the polytheists were insisting on believing in other gods and deities also besides Allah. And the Quran gave a message that there was neither a God nor a deity beside one God. So first, Allah introduces Himself as the one who sends down the Quran. So the Quran is divine and He is God. And it says, Tanzilul Aziz, Tanzilul Kitabi Minallah. And we have to always keep in mind that this Quraysh believes in Allah. Right? Allah is not a new God introduced by Rasulullah SAW. Allah is one, is where the Arabs are considered the main God. Right? Because Allah is the creator. Right, the creator. They believe in Him as the creator, and He is Allah. It's just that they give partners to Him, right, to help Him out with His work as the creator. And also they turn to these partners instead of turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they claim that Allah is just so distant from them. He is that the God that has created, and then this God suddenly goes up in the heavens and establishes Himself in the throne, and we have no access to this God. That is why we need to have masters that we turn to in times of need, masters that will protect us from harm, and masters that will bless us with lots of good. So that's the Arabs, and the Arabs, as we know, mainly, not all of them, are the daughters of Allah, whom they say are the angels. And we went through that the various verses of how they slandered Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having relations with jinns and things like that. It's all ridiculous nonsense that they have come up with, right? So they are not happy that their gods have to be removed. Therefore, it was apparent by itself from the content that the signs were of the truth of Tawheed and of the refutation of Shirk. So, as mentioned by this scholar, is that Allah just, in this particular verse, Allah says there are enough signs in the heavens and the earth. Surely in the heavens and the earth are signs for those who believe. So the signs are there. Right? But what these signs are, Allah is not bringing our attention to, because sometimes in parts of the Quran, Allah actually identify the signs that He wants us to ponder over, right? So He's saying that these signs, what are the signs supposed to point to? The signs are supposed to point to the fact that Allah is only one, and there is no other God but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's only one God, and the one God is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As for the sentence, the signs are for those who believe. That it means that although the signs are meant for all human beings, only those people can reach the right conclusion from their observation who are inclined to believe. So those who are in the state of believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believing in everything the Prophet brings, then they will see all the signs. As for the heedless people who live like animals, and the stubborn people who are resolved not to believe, the existence and the non-existence of signs is equal. Splendor and the beauty of the garden is for those who can see. A blind man cannot perceive any splendor and beauty. For him, even the existence of the garden is meaningless. This is an analogy being brought forth to make us realize the reality of the beautiful signs around us that strengthens our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That we as believers see them and others don't. So the unity of the Creator Arab is manifested in the harmony and order found in the functioning of the nature all over the universe. The book of creation presents unity in diversity and proves the infinite wisdom, omnipotence, and justice of the Creator Rab of the worlds. Rabbul Alameen, He is the Rab of the worlds, He is the sustainer of the worlds, right? And we are introduced to that in our Fatiha. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, all praise and thanks be to the Rab of the worlds, the sustainer of the worlds, and the worlds would include all the skies and the earth, and everything is in order, everything is in harmony, functioning in the most intricate ways, in the most amazing ways. And that is enough for us to understand He is God. Though He has power over all things, He does not make arbitrary changes in the laws made by Him to regulate the discipline of the working of the universe, because He is just. He's fair, He is all wise, right? He has made rulings for every single creation of His. For example, the rulings for the stars must rotate at a certain speed and revolve at a certain speed, right? Every single, the moon and everything, the skies, the mountains and everything, there are definitely physical rules to it, physical laws to it, which Allah does not violate. He puts it in place. It's not that He does not violate. He keeps it in order in the way He has arranged it to be, but at times He would actually He does allow exceptions to the rule. For example, we know of people who walked on the water. It's something against law of nature, law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it happens, right, with faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He allows it to happen to those whom He wants to happen. And that's, of course, of the amar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Amar means, when you talk about the amar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is a command of Allah. If He wants to change anything, nothing is impossible. He can change it there and then. So by discovering the laws operating the universe, man today is conditioning his activities to achieve success. To a great extent, he is moving in the right direction because he follows and obeys the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Men, they realize there are laws of the physical laws, there are chemical laws, there's biological laws, so many laws, and these laws have to be followed if we want things to be in the correct order. It is clear guidance to him that when strict adherence to the physical laws bring him success, he should also follow and obey the laws made by him to regulate and discipline his social behavior so that a fair, just, and harmonious order can be instituted to establish an ideal human society, which is the real purpose of Islam, so far as the life of this world is concerned. Right? So those people who have been studying the laws of nature, they call it nature, they don't call it laws of God, right? The laws of plants growing, the laws of animals breeding, the laws of animals mating, and all kinds of laws of animals instincts, and whatever laws of mountains, all these have got laws. Right? And if these laws are violated, human beings have realized that when they disturb the harmony of the various ecosystems, right, there will be chaos. Likewise, he's saying that we realize Allah is our God and has sent on this Quran. So the Quran comes first, and by following through the Quran, we would have harmony in our life, right? And the society will be in harmony because it's about following rules and regulations set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He who does this will be His real representative. That means you are following the laws of Allah, then you will be the Caliph of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The existence of the world serves as the indubitable, no doubt about it, argument for the existence and the attributes of Allah Almighty. It is common sense to know that any building requires a builder, any created entity requires a creator, any moved entity requires a mover, and any composite entity requires a composer. All superior and inferior creatures serve as signs for believers. We might consider them as superior, we might consider them as inferior, but they are special creatures created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with special attributes given to them and guided in their lives. Therefore, it is sufficient for the attainment of faith and belief in the existence of the one God to have an open and enlightened mind and know His omniscience, omnipotence, right, wisdom through meditation on the heavens and the earth. There would be no need for philosophical arguments, even if you happen to be unaware of the manner of composition, the chain of causality, and the perfect harmony among heavenly bodies and other creatures. So we don't have to really look into detail of the rules and everything, right? But the presence of them, the knowing of them, the believing in them is enough for us to know that it's only one God. Science for believers particularly denotes believers since the eyes of their hearts are open, but strong desires have blinded those of non-believers, depriving them of perceiving the rays of light emanating from divine existence, illuminating the worlds, and rendering their eyes of the heart incapable of perceiving such light. So the reality of why people cannot see the ayahs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is because they are devout of belief. Why are they devout of belief? Devoid of belief is because they are obsessed with their desires. And like, for example, we have Abu Jahl. He is not believing. He knows. Knowing is one thing. Believing is another thing. He knows that the Prophet ﷺ was the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has mentioned it, but he said, I can't believe in him because of his arrogance, because of his tribal affinity. Right? So these are reasons that Walid ibn Mughira, also the chiefs, are there because not wanting to accept Rasulullah as a prophet, although they knew that he was one, because of their own vested interests. So this is all their desires, which the rulings that Rasulullah brought is going to curtail what they have been living by, especially for the elites. It is the concept of that all human beings are the same. That is something very difficult for a lot of people to understand, to accept. All right, we go on to the next verse. Fi khalqikum, and in khalqikum. Khalq is the creation, right? Khalaqa is to create. So khalqikum, in your creation, wa ma, and what, yabuthu, from the word batha. Bathatha means to spread. The ya is a he, referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is fi'il mudari in its rafa state. Min dabbah, of creatures. Min is a rojar, so we have dabbatin. Ayat, signs. Liqawmi yuqinun, for people, they are certain. Li is for, qawm is people, yuqin from the word yaqin, right? Waqana, yaqana, yaqin, yuqinun, the ya and the waw nun, they are certain. In the creation, and there's an and there, right? Wa fil khalqi, wa fil khalqikum wa ma yabuthu min dabbatin ayatul liqawmi yuqinun. All right, okay. And Allah says. So Allah talks about signs that's now in fis samawati wal ard. لَآيَاتٍ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ, surely signs for the believers, and Allah says, in your creation. So Allah now brings us to our creation, خَلْقِكُمْ, in your creation, and whatever, so look at your creation itself, and whatever you see of animals that are being spread out on earth, signs for people who are yaqeen. Not believe. Mu'min, just now was for mu'min, now is for people with yaqeen. Yaqeen is certainty. And here, Allah uses a verb. Okay? That means we can understand is that to gain certainty is a process. Belief and then certain, right? So looking at all these things will help us to continuously gain certainty in the presence of Allah as the only one God. وَفِي خَلْقِكُمْ وَمَا يَبُثُّ مِنْ دَابَّةٍ آيَاتٌ لِقَوْمٍ يُوقِنُونَ. So you've got three parts here in yourself. So you look at yourself, right, to help you to have more certainty, to look at the signs in yourself that will give you certainty. Look at the animals that are spread all over the world, right? And that also will help you to increase, to give you continuous certainty of the greatness of Allah as the one God. The surah then points out that Allah's signs can also be seen within people themselves. And Allah uses the second person to make people feel close at hand. That means you, I'm talking to you here, you listen. All right, you listen up. Right? Look at your own creation, not their creation, but your own creation. So you get, there's a close, it feels that closeness of being talked to. Man's wonderful constitution, unique qualities, varied and fine functions are all miraculous indeed, but we tend to forget this because of long familiarity. And sometimes we do learn biology and we learn about the functions of the eye, the functions of the nose, the functions of the kidneys, the functions of the lungs. We learn about cells. We learn about cells, different types of cells forming up to form organs and organs forming up to form systems. Now, that is Allah asking us to look at ourselves. Maybe you don't have that kind of intricate, deep knowledge of all this functions, but just looking at ourselves, maybe look at our hair, the nature of our hair, looking at our nose, how sometimes it bleeds, sometimes it has mucus, sometimes you sneeze suddenly, looking at our eyes, sometimes it gets blurred, sometimes we go older, we can't see things, all these things. Enough, right, to make us be certain that there is definitely a God who creates us. And then look at all the animals. But he's saying that our familiarity with ourselves, we just take ourselves for granted. We never seem to look. But Allah is bringing our attention to our own creation, how we were created, right? Of course, we look at the features. We don't really have. I mean, if you talk about the Arabs at that time, right? They do know that the baby is. I mean, the baby grows in the mother's womb. They have the word rahim also actually. Somehow they seem to have some kind of knowledge, I would say, right? There's the word rahim. The baby fetus grows in the rahim, but what they see, as the Quran mentioned, is just a drop of fluid, right? That helps. That is the source of the creation of mankind, and how it develops in the womb and it comes out, and how it grows. These are enough creations, enough to think about how we, from not when they are born, they are not responsive at all. After a month, they start to respond, they start to relate, they start to look around, they start to improve in their abilities, and then start to walk and start to talk. All these things are there. But they just sometimes don't realize the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is why Allah brings us back to our creation. Indeed, the physical makeup of any human organ fills us with wonder. It is most simple and primitive in its most simple and primitive form in the amoeba, and even in smaller forms, life is a miracle. How life? Right? We are informed that for human beings, right, this is information from the Quran. Right, Allah, the fetus actually goes to, they call it it's an Arabic word for the fetus. Alaq is hanging thing. Nutfah, they call it nutfah in the Quran, right? It's a mixture of the woman's ova and the man's sperm that creates a nutfah. But so Allah is bringing our attention in the Quran, right, and how life actually is. We are aware from our what they call it, ultrasounds, right, that the heart beats as soon as the heart is full and pass blood around the body. As the fetus grow, right, we are told by the Quran that only after 120 days is the soul, is the roh blown into the fetus. only 120 days. So Allah says 40 layers of dark, 40 days of darkness after darkness after darkness. So 40 and three layers of darkness, 40 days of darkness. So it's 3 times 40, 120 days, and that's about 4 months, roughly 3 months plus. Right now, that's when the mother would actually feel the baby moving. So before that, the baby has got no roh, but it is alive in the sense that the heart is beating. Right? We are aware that animals also have got no roh. We are informed of that. So there is life with roh, and there is also life without roh. It's still, the roh is in itself is very complicated for us. So Allah doesn't bring us to the roh because Allah says that the matter of the roh is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The roh is spirit, we call the spirit. Right? So we look at ourselves in our physical form. With observable physical constitution, man also has much more complex psychological and emotional constitution. So that's something which a lot of us are trying to explain, trying to help people through their emotional states, their psychological states, but learning and how, approaching them in many ways. And the Quran has got everything actually. So Allah asks us to look at our creation. And then around man, countless creatures walk on earth, different kinds and great varieties of shape, size, and form. And we have human beings have studied these creatures and has even classified them, right, into reptiles, mammals, birds, fish, mollusks, all these aeronoids, insects, and whatever they have classified them into, right? And the classification follows certain attributes, certain characteristics of these animals, right? We can't call, like for example, the other day my grandson was asking, what is the covering of a lizard? I told him a lizard is a reptile, so it must have shells. It must have scales, right? Then he comes around and asks me, how about frogs? So frogs are not reptiles, so they can't have scales. Frogs are amphibians. So this human being has classified them, right? And we have learned them, and we follow these classifications, and we see these animals as being classified in various groups. Then again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made exceptions. Like for example, we've got the anteater, the platypus, right? These are supposedly mammals because they've got fur and they give milk to their young, but they also lay eggs. So that makes it a bit off from the definition of mammals, in which mammals are supposed to give birth. But all these are there for us to have greater faith, greater certainty that it has to be, there's definitely one who is beyond understanding his might. He has the might to create, he has the might, and also he's all full of wisdom, so much. So Allah brings our attention to the animals, not only a particular animal, but all the animals that are spread all over the world, which most of us don't know every single animal on earth. But the scientists don't know all of them, I would say. Only Allah knows them all. There are those who are minute, which are recently discovered, like viruses and maybe fungi and bacteria, and they got all kinds of, human beings have been meddling with viruses and bacteria and trying to create things out of things without much wisdom and might to stop. Said that the COVID is created, Wallahu alam bisawab, created in a sense that it is manipulated to form a certain virus that now somehow not being able to be controlled by people and has caused lots of great harm to human beings who have got the COVID virus. It really destroys our immunity system. We do realize that after we have COVID, our body isn't that as good as it used to be. And as human beings interference, as we know, there's GM, right? Genetic modification, they call it. They might put one gene to another gene, not knowing the reality of their actions. It changes forms, it takes different attributes, it seems to serve human beings, but the reality of what they have done right? It's not really known. Only Allah knows. So Allah asks us to look enough. By looking at all these things around us is enough for us to gain certainty of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The smallest is the same as the largest. They are all miraculous in their creation and in the way they fit with the overall pattern of life. So if you say the smallest of the creatures of Allah is the same as the largest of the creatures of Allah, what is the smallest creature of Allah? Right? Viruses, maybe, or the atoms. Atoms are not small. We've got electrons, just smaller than the atoms, right? How it moves. Right? All these are creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They might be inanimate, right? And not able to have life, but they're just so amazing. Right? If you look at the atom in itself, those who have learned chemistry until A levels, hybridization of the electrons can create going to this shell, that shell, S shells, SP shells, they create all kinds of shells in them. They're just profound, right? Miraculous, that is what it is. Even the smallest to the largest, every single creature of Allah is a miraculous creation of Allah, and they feed in the overall pattern in this not only pattern of life, in the scheme of life, in this plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of these creatures have got a role to play, right, in the life of the world and also in the universe. No species increases beyond certain limits to the extinction of other species. It is a human interference that causes extinction of animals. Of course, that is when the human are around, right? Because before that, extinction of dinosaurs exists, right? Allah knows what He's doing. He has dinosaurs coming out. We know dinosaurs exist because we have bones. We as Muslims are not supposed to deny dinosaurs just because the Quran didn't mention anything about the dinosaurs, right? They existed, but they have been destroyed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by His wisdom and His might. Destroyed huge creatures that was roaming the earth. He destroys all of them. Not even a single dinosaur we see now in this world extinct. Because we know about the dodo birds and other birds which were used to be around and extinct because of human interference. Right? Only the mighty hand of Allah controls them all, increasing or decreasing them according to a perfect measure, giving them the qualities and functions that ensure proper balance. So these are every single animal on earth has got their own attribute that allow them to function on earth and also to interact with other creatures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The case of those who made up their minds not to believe, or those who have chosen for themselves to remain lost in the blind alleys of doubt is different. But when those who have not locked up their hearts against belief and conviction will consider seriously their own creation, the structure of their own body, the varieties of animals found on earth, they will see countless such signs as will leave no doubt in their minds that all this did not come into being without a God. So at the end of the day, all the signs point to the fact there's only one God who did all these things. There's no way there can be many gods. As Allah has said, if there are many gods, it will not be in harmony because each God would want it their way. Although it stood in need of more than one God for its creation, it doesn't allow for the whole of the creation of Allah to need more than one God. In spite of the fact that thousands of books have been authored on the mysteries surrounding their creation, human knowledge is quite limited. We don't know. We don't know ourselves. I find it quite surprising that modern science somehow considered the spleen as of not much use in the human body. And if the spleen is not functioning well, it doesn't seem to have any function. Spleen. The spleen is a big organ actually. According to some of them, the spleen's function was in the initial in the womb. But when the Chinese medicine is concerned, the spleen is a very important part of the body. And if it is removed, there will be lots of repercussions. So that means human beings are still unaware of the functions of the various organs and the realities of removing some of the organs. Maybe you can still function, but certain parts of your bodies might not be functioning quite well. All right, as it is also human beings, they are able to cause the fusing of the ova and the sperm outside the body, but they have still, the human beings, scientists is still yet to be able to allow that fetus, all right, the fetus, the zygote, right, to multiply outside the body and to form a human being, right? It has to be placed in the womb of a human being, right? It's a surrogate mother, but still it is placed in a womb, right? And the womb nurtures the body, the fetus, and allows it to grow into a human being. And of course, then again, this is of the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He allows a human being to learn and to do such things and to place the fetus back into the womb. And He Himself brings in, of course, blows in the roh that comes in after 3.5 months of the fetus developing in the womb. There's lots more we don't know. There's definitely. Each of these creatures serves as a sign of the Creator's infinite knowledge, wisdom, and omnipotence. However, many individuals witness such signs for decades, but they are totally unaware of them. People just seem to be oblivious of these great inventions, the great creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Beauty of the various plants and animals around us. Here Allah talks about animals, but what more plants? The animals. And I mean, despite the fact that you have talked about the cat family, which is made up of the tiger and this and that, and again, characteristics comes in that allows them to be called cats, and why this family is called dogs, and why these families are called fish. Fish is different. Cats are different. And cats and dogs, they are mammals, and yet they are differentiated according to their characteristics. But people are not aware that not many people are spending time to actually ponder. One of the very important aspect of life as a Muslim is to sit and ponder, because that is the instruction of the Quran for us. So we've got fikir, we've got zikir, we've got salat. These are things that brings people to increase in their certainty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So first you have faith, right? And you might not be certain, but by looking around you, you gain that certainty and your faith becomes strong. They are for those who have opened their hearts and are thirsty for certitude and knowledge. Such people do not fail to notice the slightest movement and the tiniest being, rather ponder about them for long hours. Thus transcend towards Allah and the book of knowing the Creator, spending their time in devotions and supplications, looking at the wonders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, looking at the various trees and the leaves and the plants and the fruits, right? When they eat, we are told in the verse, in one verse, that look at the food that you eat, the rice that you eat, what is made up of, how does it get there, right? The rice is different from the wheat. They're all from the grass family. The wheat is different from the rye and the corn and the maize and the whatever rice family, barley you have. It's just so amazing a race for us to realize the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, increase in our devotions in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and by looking at the whole world, we realize there's a next world, right? It is inevitable for the next world to be there. Bringing the goblets of their hearts, the wine of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the special people who learning increase your love for Allah subhanahu. You need to learn. You need to increase your knowledge of Allah. The Quran is one of the best source of is the best source of knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are alhamdulillah blessed with learning the Quran, and inshallah our faith in Allah increases further. All right. We'll stop there. Inshallah. اللهم ارحمنا بالقرآن واجعله لنا إماما ونورا وهدى ورحمة. اللهم ذكرنا منه ما نسينا وعلمنا منه ما جهلنا وارزقنا تلاوته آناء الليل وأطراف النهار واجعله لنا حجتين يا رب العالمين. اللهم استودعك ما علمتني فردده إلي وقت حاجتي إليه فلا تنسينيه يا رب العالمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. ربنا انفعنا بما علمتنا. ربي علمنا الذي ينفعنا. ربي فقهنا وفقه أهلنا وقرابات لنا في ديننا مع أهل القتر أنثى وذكر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلى الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. الحمد لله الحمد لله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ustazah, jazakumullah khair.